I had to close my business account, and I walked away with $41.15.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Hi if you're new here. Hi if you're not. My name's Danielle. I make a ton of content here on YouTube, specifically talking about debunking, making commentary on the problematic or questionable behavior, in my opinion, found in the life, spiritual, and business coaching spaces. Today, I am sitting down with Sunny Richards, whose story you might recognize from the New York Times article that was published a couple of months ago now. I will link it in the description below. And we were able to connect through my favorite place on the internet, the Life Coach Snark subreddit. If you're not already hanging out there, what are you doing? Now, I also covered this article in a live stream, which I will link in the cards here. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend that you go and watch that. Now, in this video in particular, I am sitting down with Sunny where she shares her story, which for me personally, her story was super relatable. And I'm sure that many of you who have been impacted by this industry, particularly those of you who have had a maybe not so pleasant experience, will relate to her story as well. I'm going to let her really detail what that experience looked like specifically. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoy this content, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already. Huge shout out to my channel VIP members, as well as Suzanne, Zurify, Harrison, and Tom in the billionaire tier. Thank you so much for being here. Let's go ahead and jump right in.
I was previously an IT project manager. I was making six figures in the corporate world. I, rather enjoyed it. Had all these benefits and a sweet 401k. Um, what got me into coaching, honestly, was the fact that I was laid off from two jobs back to back here in this area, in this new area that I had just moved to. Didn't know anyone, didn't have any contacts, and didn't have that thing. And so the second time that happened to me in a span of about 18 months, the second time I was laid off, I was like, and I was told, ooh, I'll never forget the way I was told. We have just done a reorg and there's no box for you. And I was like, okay, you know what? I don't want to be in your box anyway. I don't want to be in your box. So honestly, that was just a state of I'm in this place where I don't want to be so vulnerable to all of these job cuts all the time. I don't want to constantly be looking for a job. So I asked a friend who was more of a health coach, that was, I was, I really admired her the life that she appeared to be living, where she could teach yoga one day, she could teach, Pilates, she could do strength training, or she'd be out on the lake paddleboarding. I mean, just different things on different days. And so I was like, can I pick your how did you create this kind of life? Because like I want, something similar. Maybe not fitness, because I don't want to go through all of the certifications that you just mentioned. But she said to me, Danielle, in the moment, she said, I have a friend who is studying to be a life coach. And in so doing, she is learning so much about herself and helping herself along the way. And I just got activated. I was like, ooh, that's it. Sacral hit, life coach. I went home and I Googled, what is a life coach?
See, I find that so fascinating because I feel like so many of us who at some point in our journey have been involved in the coaching industry have similar stories in that, like, you see someone who's doing this cool thing, their life looks so great.
Hmm.
I want to be able to do that. Maybe you talk to them, you reach out to them. I know in my experience, I connected with a few different people who are doing it. And it was like, I can make money by helping other people also enjoy their life. Like, wow.
And I can learn how to help myself along the way.
Exactly. So, can you describe some of that, some of those like initial feelings or impressions that when you first discovered what coaching was?
Well, the first thing I did was the first thing I did was I found a podcast, So first I Googled and then I searched life coach and podcasts. I picked the one that came up first. I ran with it and actually found myself really hurled into a parasocial relationship just just like that. I had this person in my ear, and she sounded so warm and so wonderful, and she kept repeating, I didn't know about NLP back then. I didn't know, how all of that worked, but, um, I just remember her saying repeatedly, the reason I got into coaching," she says, "is because I just want to eliminate as much unnecessary human suffering as possible." And I was like, "Yeah, me too, girl, me too." Yeah. And, unfortunately, it turns out later, she didn't talk about the money back then. She didn't talk about that. When I first started listening to it, it was just how to have a better life. And I thought, "Yeah, I want that, and I want other people around me to have that too. Where do I sign up?"
And so is that what happened? Did you sign up shortly after that? Or did you kind of like listen to the podcast for a while?
I listened to hundreds of episodes before I signed up for anything. I did, so I thought I was being discerning. I thought I was, you know, um, following my heart, following my gut, going with but also going with a little bit of, skepticism and ensuring that because this program was super expensive. It was a lot of money. And, I just, it took me a while to do that, but I did sign up it took me about 6 months of listening to the podcast, but I would binge. I would go on an hour, 2 hour walk and I would just binge episode after episode on those walks every single day. I couldn't get enough of it. And I was like, oh, I I can do this. I can show up in front of a microphone and I can talk to people and I can be their friend. I can do that.
It's funny because I feel like as I listen to your story, I have so many similar experiences. I vividly remember like driving to a very specific town that was like 2 hours away from where I was living and planning out a playlist of these podcasts being like, okay, we're going to listen to, episode 150 and 151 and then on the way back we're going to listen to 153 and 154 and it's just like it's so fascinating to think back on it now with hindsight, obviously, and just realize how you don't notice it when it's happening. You're just like so excited. This person finally understands the way I'm feeling. They're speaking to me, teaching me these tools that I can use. And then like I never signed up for that program specifically, but that was really the gateway for me, I think, into coaching. And I think for many people.
The gateway
So
drug, it's a
yeah,
podcast.
literally.
Yeah.
This podcast is a gateway drug.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so then I guess you listen to this podcast for like 6-ish months, and
Yep.
then you finally decide to sign up for the certification. Is that how that went?
I didn't go straight to certification. I started with a lower ticket offer.
Okay.
I started with a monthly membership and I was 6 months into that. So I was a year in before I signed up for uh, the certification. But I got so much benefit from the membership that I was like, okay, I mean, certification. If this is what $300 a month gets you, you know, the certification must be mind blowing. It has to be. And of course, it was advertised as such. It'll blow your freaking mind.
Obviously, I've spoken out quite a bit about some of the misleading marketing and negative experiences people have had. And a lot of the feedback I get is, well, I was in the monthly membership and it's amazing. It changed my life. And so I think it's important to give credit where credit is due. And you can have a positive experience in some of these programs. But just because one person benefits doesn't mean that harm isn't caused elsewhere by that same person, right? So, looking back now that this is all past you, and obviously we're going to get a little bit more into the actual nitty gritty of the details, do you still feel that same way about those first 6 months of joining that monthly membership? You think it was beneficial for you and something that you don't have regrets for?
No, I don't. Because a lot of my peers will spin it and explain, hey, what about the good that you took away from it? What about this? What about this? And it's just that can really that causes so much harm, honestly. I do believe that it causes so much harm. It was not a trauma-informed situation at all, and I just no, it's not that I don't wanna look back on that period of my life in a loving way and say, "Oh, look what I got from it." No, I don't want to. I wanna be real and honest with myself and everyone else. I
And
do.
I feel like, unfortunately, just based purely on the conversations I've had, your experience isn't necessarily unique. And I'm sure you've seen that too. Like, we connected through Reddit, and there's a plethora of people sharing their experiences there.
Mhm.
Um,
That's where all
and
the haters go. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was having a conversation in the comments section on one of my videos recently where essentially someone was saying something to the effect of, I've benefited greatly, so this can't possibly be a scam. And I literally just encourage them, look up the program name, look up the word scam on Google, and you can have your own time reading the hundreds of reviews of people who might say otherwise. So
Right.
I guess we've kind of side railed the conversation here, but if we could bring it back to your experience, finally deciding to sign up for the certification specifically and what that process kind of was like. And I guess when eventually you started, the red flags started to go off. Or is that
Mm,
later?
no, 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 no. I didn't get through certification without a lot of red flags. I while I was in it, I saw it. But I guess okay, how it started? I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't nearly as good as the membership that was so much cheaper. I mean, it wasn't. Um, it ended up being, you know, again, I'm going back to admitting and owning that I developed a parasocial relationship with this person. And so I thought I was gonna get her, and I didn't. To this day, I've never even been in her presence physically, not one time. Never met her, nothing to this day. Um, in certification, it ended up being just pre-recorded videos. It was pre-recorded videos, and all of the workbooks that I got, I was like, "Oh, these look actually, they're just thicker versions of the same workbooks that was in the membership I was in previously," which, by the way, did not come with certification. I had to leave the membership because I had to pay for both. I had to pay for both certification and the $300 a month membership at that time. Now, I know it's gone back and forth with this particular school, but that's the way it was when I enrolled in 2019. That's what it was, is I had to leave the membership. I'd been there a year, but I had to leave because I was like, "I can't possibly, like, pay another monthly fee on top of tens of thousands of dollars," you know? So, uh, yeah, when did I see it start to be I mean, so I tried to make the best of it. I tried to make the best of it in the beginning. I tried to tell myself it was just my thoughts. My mindset wasn't right, that kind of thing, and of course, that is exactly what they were teaching, beating us about the head with, honestly. Anything that happens in your life is really just how you perceive it. It's your thought about it, and you can change that. Anything. And even then, I was like, "Well, wait a second. Yeah, I mean, I guess I can see that as a privileged white woman, but what about other people? What about, some circumstances that they find themselves in? What about abuse? What about that kind of thing?" There would be there would always be a way to explain even abusive relationships, um, suicidal tendencies. I would see coaching come up and shared and see people get really, really vulnerable and then be told that that they can fix every problem in their life by changing their thought about it. That made me sick, Danielle, because I was like, I don't think that's true. Yeah, those red flags came up early, but I was already in. I was already in. There's no refund. There's no way to get out. So I really just had to see it through at that point.
And I think there's a level of, sunk cost fallacy that
That
takes
part.
place there too, of like, "Okay, well, I'm already out of this money, so if I don't finish it, what's the point? I might as well try and see," like we were kind of alluding to earlier, like, try and see if I can piece some sort of value out of this program. Even if I don't fully believe in it anymore, there has to be some good here because I spent so much money, right?
Yes, 100%. Money and honestly, for me, it isn't just about the money, excuse me. It isn't about the money as much as it is about the detriment to my own mental health. The emotional costs have been tremendous. Um, the learning how to gaslight myself into believing things that everyone else believes, and it's like, am I if I'm the only one that's saying this or seeing this, then I must be the one that needs fixing.
And I think the environment is conducive to that as well, because I talk about this a lot in most of my content, really, is like the echo chamber that gets formed in any of these programs, wherein if you are the person that starts to question, like, is this what I was sold on? Am I actually getting value here? Is this even ethical, the things that we're doing and talking about and being taught? But if you say anything, it's turned into a you problem again. You're not thinking the right thoughts. Your mindset isn't right. I, the coach, have done what I said I would do, and now it's your responsibility. And
Yeah.
so there isn't a lot of like accountability there. And so when you're in that environment and all of the other students are also, drinking the Kool Aid, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
it can leave you to feel incredibly isolated, I'm sure. Was that
Yes.
your experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And did you
Isolated.
voice those concerns?
No, I was afraid to.
Hmm.
I mean, no, I knew because of that the echo chamber was so obvious to me. I mean, I would go in this group of over 3,000 coaches and just constantly see the same things being told, to anybody that brought any problem. They would just jump in and start coaching you without your permission, which drove me crazy. I was like, but yeah, I saw that and I was like, these people aren't going to listen to me. They're not gonna listen to me. What they're gonna do is tell me to change my thoughts, change my mindset, that it's just me. And I knew that. So no, I didn't for a very long time. We're talking about, I started certification in 2019, but let's give the credit for the year of podcasting and membership as well that came prior to that. I'm 6 years into this before I finally said enough, enough. And I need to say something.
Good for you. And I'm so happy that we were able to connect just by chance and have this conversation, because I do think there is a lot of value in those who have had harmful or negative experiences.
Mhm,
Because again, I know that you're not the only one. And I know that there are many, many people who are afraid to say anything, purely just based on the feedback that I get from the content that I create, of like, I thought I was crazy and I was the only one who had this experience. And so I really do just want to thank you, because I do think there is a lot of value in having the courage to speak out and share your
mhm.
experience. And I know that it's going to be very helpful for people.
I don't know that that's courageous, but thank you for saying that because, part of me is like, "God, why didn't you do this years ago?" And the part that you just mentioned, you know, we may get into the, article that I, was a part
Mhm.
of, but, the hardest part of that interview was having was having the reporter say the very same thing to me, that you're not the only one, and I've heard this story over and over again, and that is what breaks my heart. It's not just me. It doesn't make me feel any better to be a member of this club. It makes me feel worse, to be honest, that there are so many of us out there that are holding it in for fear of retaliation.
100%. I absolutely agree. And so I think it's important then for us to kind of continue on this timeline of what this journey looked like for you. So you discover the podcast in 2018. You sign up for the certification in 2019.
Yeah.
What is that process? How long is it? Are you actively coaching at some point, continuing to pay for mentorship? What was the entirety of that journey?
For me, from my experience at the time, the certification itself was 6 months, and then there was another 6 months after, where you could take a track toward entrepreneurship or another, deep dive, coaching type thing, and honestly, I'd seen enough to know that I didn't want, any more, like, deep coaching, but the the carrot that was dangled for those who took that track were, "Hey, we'll hire you at the school," you know, kinda thing. So, I'd say within my cohort of 10, it went about half and half, 5 went this way and 5 went this way in terms of, what we wanted out of what we wanted to do with our certification. I wanted to make a living. I wasn't looking for, I didn't think it was unreasonable to replace my 6 figures because that was constantly paraded in front of all of us, that it's so easy to make a six-figure income, blah, 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 and I was like, "Okay, I mean, I've done it before, I can surely do it again," you know? But I think about the way I did it before was relationships and in a completely different structure. And here, I was a number. I didn't have any relationships beyond just my peers. Um, yes, we coached during the certification process, we coached one another. We were encouraged to give a lot of free coaching sessions. We recorded those sessions, we sent them in for grades, those kind of things, just to see if we were doing it right. Not ethically, just right. Just checking these boxes, right? So I honestly have only ever had, in all of this time, maybe about 6 paying clients total. I've coached my face off, as we like to say in the industry, for years and years. I've given all these free sessions, but you know what I found? Nobody's asking for this. Nobody's asking for coaching. A lot of people are asking for therapy. That's where I landed, but nobody's really asking for somebody to sugarcoat what life really is like for them. And, yeah, I couldn't I couldn't continue with that. It became evident to me, Danielle, that the way to the riches was to manipulate and dupe and lie and charge way, way more than is absolutely reasonable. That's how you make the money. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that with people's minds, their hearts, their souls, their spirits. Couldn't do
Or their
that.
bank accounts?
Or their bank accounts, especially not their bank accounts. The most I've ever charged is like 500 bucks,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
I feel like, again, you and I have a similar perspective, similar
Mhm.
experience, and I think for me, my gripe with coaching and building a quote unquote successful coaching business was always like, I'm not going to sell my soul and lie to people just to get them to give me money or encourage people. I mean, this could be a whole other conversation, but encouraging people to go into debt or pay
Yeah,
at all costs. It's like, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't want to I came into coaching because I want to genuinely help people. And I feel like there's a lot of behavior that's encouraged that is kind of counterintuitive to actually positively impacting people. So,
it is. It's
anyway,
it's it's the exact opposite. No, I think about again, you said it, and, Katie Bishop said it, and, and so many, Eva Collins says it. It's not there we're not the only ones. And knowing the just the sheer volume of coaches that may still be in that place of trying to make it work, trying to manipulate themselves, trying to lie to themselves, and, all of that, that this is a true business to help other people. My heart goes out to each and every one of them. It does. It does. And, it I feel so much sorrow that I was ever a part of that. I go back and think of the half a dozen clients that I ever had. Uh, and I'll did I did I say harmful things? Did I? I still think about that. It still haunts me. I wonder if I did, just by parroting, you know, repeating what I was told, that kind of thing, because that was the way to do it. Conditioning.
Yeah, you don't ask questions, you just do whatever so and so told you to do.
Mhm. Yep.
So again, I'm just trying to get like a clear picture of the timeline. So we graduate, we work with a few clients. Like when did you come out of the industry?
Last week. I held on to that sunk cost fallacy until
So
last
then
week.
what was that period of a few years like? Like what were you doing?
It's very popular to come out of certification and go straight into this course or that course and how to run business, which again was crazy to me because I was like, well, isn't this what I was supposed to have been learning with that certification, right? I chose the entrepreneur track. I thought I was going to be learning that. But again, canned videos, old stuff, tell you how to build funnels. They're showing how to create Facebook ads from like 2007. I mean, it was like old stuff. I was like, Facebook doesn't even look like that anymore. These are not the menus. It was like that. It was pathetic. It was pathetic. And, then they were like, "Oh, and then you can, create your own mastermind groups and things like that." We're like, "Oh, okay, well, how do we do that?" "Well, just get some groups and go." Okay, you know? So, it took me a little while to try to invest in anyone else, but I did. I invested in a coach, and I still really appreciate her, and we're still friends. Really just dug into astrology and the woo, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, yeah, tell me more." This is like, I need to feel some kind of connection to this work again because I wasn't connected. I was so disconnected from this work. I was disembodied. I was disempowered, all of it. And so I don't regret that, and it was not that much of an investment. But and then I did another one, then I had another one-on-one business coach, which was okay, but I just really didn't get much more out of that than I had gotten through the certification process. That's not necessarily her fault, it just is what it is, you know? Again, I didn't pay a lot of money for that. And then I did go through, so over the 6 years, these other that I'm mentioning were probably over the last 3 years. So let's say 1 a year, maybe. I did sign up with another coach to help me with my business and tell me how to do this and that. And here's how the emails work. And here's how, this works. And, by the way, I have affiliate links. And so you can get discounts for this product and this product. And I signed up for the products that I had no business signing up for. I didn't need those things. I didn't have clients, you know, I did not have clients. So I really had no business paying anybody else any more money to tell me how to get clients because none of them ever really did.
But you're conditioned to think like, okay, well, Jane Doe, she's so successful and she has all these products and this is her how her funnel is set up. So if I just copy her,
That's
it's
it.
going to happen for me too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's painful to admit, but it's true. It's
Well, and you
true.
don't see it. I mean, I think that there's a lot of self-compassion to be had as well for that version of yourself that doesn't like recognize what's going on, right? Because
Mhm.
again, You've basically indoctrinated yourself into this environment where you don't ask questions. You take everything you're told at face value and you run with it. So, where is the time for me to be able to practice discernment? Where is the opportunity for me to ask myself, is this a good investment or not? When everyone around me is a yes man telling me that this is what I need in order to be successful.
Yes, that echo chamber is very powerful, actually.
And I
Very
think
powerful.
people discredit that. People discredit the power that being in an environment like that can have over your ability to think critically.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm sure you've mentioned this before. I know I have mentioned it, that, it is cultish behavior. It really is. I mean, the indoctrination, the all of that, it's, and the fear, and the fear of speaking out. There's so many parallels, so many, that it's frightening, actually. Because again, we're like, "Ooh, this is supposed to be self-help. We're helping each other and we're helping others." And, you know, and we're also entrepreneurs, and we're independent, and we're free, and we can work 3 hours a week and make millions. And
And so, what was the breaking point for you? Because I feel like we talk a lot about, the fear of speaking out and whatever. What was that turning point where you were like, you know what, enough is enough? I'm going to go public with this.
the turning point for me, the breaking point, was when I finally had to admit that I had to admit defeat. I had to admit failure. I had to close my business account, and I walked away with $41.15. And that's all I had left to show for those 6 years. And that was the moment that enough, enough. I'm not gonna be quiet about this anymore. I'm not gonna hold this in. I'm not gonna pretend this didn't happen. I'm not gonna feel suicidal. Went through all those things. I'm in such intensive therapy right now, but still, um, to recover from coaching, to recover from coaching. And I'm just I am grateful that I do not think that I took it that far with anyone, to where, that kind of damage, that I may have perpetuated that kind of damage myself, or harm. Um, but, you know, I'm over it, and I want some people in this industry to start taking accountability for their actions and own. Everybody's telling me to own stuff. I'm like, "No. No, no. Yeah, take ownership." "What?" "Eh, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that. What are you doing?" "No. I've taken my ownership. I've taken my hits, and I'm done. I wanna see some accountability from others in this space. I really and truly do. I wanna even just see some recognition that the things that you and I are saying are true. They're really happening."
You know what's funny? I don't know if you've seen this, but I've been noticing this a lot more, maybe because I spend so much time on threads specifically. But there are coaches who previously would respond to my content, call me a mean girl, make passive aggressive posts on their Instagram about these haters that are speaking out against coaching. Now, 6 months later, coming around saying there's a lot of problematic things happening in the coaching industry. Oh, I'm leaving the coaching industry. Oh, this and this, which I think is great. It's nice to see people are waking up, but they don't acknowledge the fact that they themselves were perpetuating that same thing 6 months ago. I have no
Right.
problem taking ownership and being like, yeah, I never did anything particularly problematic, but definitely cringy. And
Yes.
I've made videos of me reacting to my old
Mhm.
coaching content. Like, look at how horribly out of touch this is.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing that with a lot of the like big players in the game who now want to, act like they're the whistleblower. And it's like, again, where is the accountability?
I know.
I don't see it.
No, I don't either. I don't either. And I don't think that, I don't think that there will be. I think that, those in this space of coaching who have made literal millions off of the rest of us, um, they'll walk away with their millions, and maybe try something new, something different. And of course, it'll be their choice. It'll be like, you know, I've helped so many people and I'm ready to just retire to my private island or whatever it is, right? Um, yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it anymore. I also know, and I know you've talked about this as well, I know that all of these income claims are just absolute bullshit. You know, yeah, no one's talking about the operating costs. No one's talking about the money that goes out the door. No one's talking about net profit. It's just, okay, here's all the money I brought in. Yeah. But you think about that though, too, Danielle, and it's like these are the these are the coaches that you're competing with in that space. The ones with the large advertising budgets and that kind of thing. And then you're encouraged. Your first year of business, you're encouraged to just break even. Just break even. Spend all the money on Facebook ads. That's what it was back then. And I'm like, is that what you all are doing? Is it? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe they were.
Or I run a $500,000 coaching business, but it's cumulative over the last 8 years, but I'm not gonna say that. I'm just gonna say total revenue lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Very
part.
interesting. So what was your I know this was detailed quite a bit in the article, which I'll link in the description of this video, but for those of you who maybe don't wanna go read, what was the financial implications of this for you specifically, if you're comfortable sharing?
The certification itself cost me 18,000. The I had already spent, with a year of that of the membership that I spoke about, that was another couple of thousand. So let's just say I'm in 20 already just to get that title. um and be a part of the community. Woo! That echo chamber. Then the other three coaches that I mentioned, the just general operating costs, having a website, a blog, of this, of that, email platform, um, all of that. I'm at least 30 grand in, at least. And I think that's probably conservative.
And how are you funding that? Was that cash you had or loans,
No, I
savings?
pulled out of my 401k to pay for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, and I'm not proud of that. But now that second job that I mentioned that, there's no box for you, the 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 good part about that is even though I had only been there for 7 months, um, they gave everybody who had been there for less than a year's severance. So, I mean, I didn't get like a year's salary, but I got, the same severance as an employee who had been there for a full year. So that was nice. I mean, I got a little package. It wasn't a lot, but it was, hey, it was something. And so I had that. That kind of kept me afloat for a little while. But in order to pay for the actual certification itself, I pulled from my 401 and I took the penalties and all of those things.
And was that something that had been encouraged, or did you sort of come up with that idea on your own?
Maybe a little of both,
Yeah.
both because yeah, within that environment, yes, it's like, look, this is an investment. Invest in you, invest in yourself.
You'll make it back
You'll
tenfold.
make it back. Exactly. You'll make it back in no time. And I remember this woman, she was like almost 60. And she said, I'm at a crossroads. I'm at a place where I can either go back to school and get my master's degree or pay for this certification. But the only way I can do either is to sell my house, sell it, not get a second mortgage, not get a loan, sell my house. And she was willing to gamble everything. And that hurt my soul to hear her say that. And I don't know what came of her. I don't know if she ended up selling her house and signing up for coaching, but it is not at all an uncommon refrain.
This is actually so wild that you're bringing this up today because literally, like an hour before we got on this call, I had made a post about the New York Times article on Threads, and someone replied saying, I knew of a photography coach that would encourage her clients to sell their house to pay for the program. And when I read that an hour ago, I was like, you have to be joking me. That's not real. And now you're literally saying the same thing in a different context. So, like,
It's
ah,
real. It's real. Yeah, I'm, like, activated. Whew, yeah. It's real. It's true, and
and
it's
it's
not
horribly heartbreaking to think
it is.
about the vulnerable position that these people are in. And again, it comes back to this point of like, well, people need to practice personal responsibility. When
Yes.
I'm in an environment where I'm in a vulnerable position, Sally is offering me the perfect solution to my problem.
Mm.
And all I have to do is get rid of this asset to get the money to be able to afford it.
Well, because you can buy another house in a couple years,
Exactly.
right?
When
I
I
mean,
get
you
my
can
money
buy a
back,
better house. You can buy a better house. It'll be an upgrade.
it's heartbreaking.
It is. It is. It is. Because, I saw this woman and I think I saw a part of myself. And I said, "What lengths are we willing to go you know, to play this game? What lengths are we willing to go to? What cons are we willing to make?" Yeah.
And so when you finally decided that you were done with the industry, going to speak out about what was happening, how did that come about? Did the New York Times reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? Did you make a post elsewhere? I'm not too familiar with what that actually looked like for you.
I had been given the, reporter's name, as someone to reach out to back, earlier this year, the first part of the year, actually, and I think I had just missed her deadline at the time, so she was, she said, "If anything else comes up, I'll reach out to you." I did I did make a I did make some noise on Reddit, and right around the same time, she reached back out to me. I mean, she hadn't seen the Reddit. I sent it to her, um as some background. But yeah, she it just happened. It just so happened that she was ready, that the article never did get published before. And here I was. And the crazy thing is, I didn't know until the article was published. And of course, as I've mentioned, I went through that with her, saying, "You're not the only one. I've heard this story over and over," right? It turns out that, not to spoil it too much, but in the article, there are really only 2 coaches talked about. There are other, experts and things that brought in, but there are only 2 coaches, and when I saw my good friend opening, I was like, "Oh, okay, sister." We hadn't talked to one another. We didn't know we were talking to the same person. We didn't, here we are.
So what was the sort of what's the word? Like aftermath, I guess, of this article getting published? Has there been pushback, positive feedback, either direction? Like, what has that been like for you?
They're big mad at me. They are big mad. Um, really angry. A lot of lashing out, a lot of, as you mentioned, at what point do you take personal responsibility for, the investments that you made and blah, 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 and I'm like, you know, I kind of have been. I've actually spent quite a number of years beating myself up over it. Thank you very much. I really don't need you to add and pile on. It took a lot for me to go on the record, and it took a lot for the other coach to go on the record, but the only way that we could was to know that we were done with the industry altogether. That's it. We are done, done, done. That is the only way to let this go. I have had, yes, I do have a circle of support, of like-minded people, coaches, former coaches, and, they have been nothing but supportive. They have been amazing. But the larger group, the, 3.5 thousand, are furious, and that tells me they're scared. Because you know, I think the New York Times is, carries a little bit more teeth than some of these other publications that have come out in the past. A little more merit, maybe. I don't know, I could be wrong, but, I kinda smelled some fear.
Yeah, I really think based on the conversations I've had in the past week or so that, while yes, obviously there are other online publications that have spoken about this, I think the fact that it's coming from the New York Times is cause for concern, and this is just my opinion, but it's cause for concern for some of these coaches because that's like mainstream attention. The people that consume the New York Times
Yeah.
aren't just people who are chronically online, aren't just people who have been burned by the coaching industry. It's like regular John Smith drinking his morning coffee, right? So
Mhm.
once you get that one mainstream publication that sort of picks up on what's going on here, who's to say what kind of snowball effect this could potentially have? Maybe it's nothing, maybe it goes nowhere, but I think in the back of some of these people's heads, it's like, oh shit, maybe I need to look at what I'm doing. Because I don't know if you've seen this or if it's come up in like the Facebook groups that you're in, but I know Stripe, for example, renewed their terms of service last week. And one of the things is like you can't use misleading marketing if you want to sell your products through Stripe. And so
Ooh, I love it.
there's been a lot of feedback from these coaches freaking out, being like, "Oh my god, this means I can't sell my programs anymore." And it's like, "No, if you have an honest marketing strategy, you're welcome to use Stripe to sell your program, so there shouldn't be cause for concern." But
God, that's
it's very telling how people react to these sort of things in terms of like where their integrity is, in my opinion, and where how they're presenting the things that they're selling. So, just interesting.
I saw a comment on Reddit, and I think it was about the article share itself, something along the lines of, you know, some people just take joy in slamming the industry, and I thought, "Ah, this journey has been anything but joyful." I'm not celebrating, going public with this. I'm not celebrating where I ended up with it. I'm not celebrating much of anything. So the notion that I'm gleefully trying to tear down the industry, which is, again, if I could be so powerful, okay, give me all the power. It's just me and it's just me and she and the NYT. And if I'd known, I've said this in the closed circles. If I had known that if I'm that powerful and I had known this is all it would took, I would have done it years ago.
But again, I think that like that perspective of, you sharing your experience in this article, for example, is not tearing down the industry. It's you literally speaking your truthful experience. And so it's always interesting to me. And obviously, I receive a ton of this backlash just purely based on the content that I put out. That I have some like vendetta of like I want to destroy everyone. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm just sharing facts. I'm sharing people's personal experience. I'm sharing, what I've found based on the research I've conducted. If you want to perceive that as, it being hateful or with ill intent, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But that's not my intention. I'm not here to ruin everyone's life. I'm
Right.
just here to, platform people's experience. And so for you to share your truthful experience of what you went through and the implications that you experienced as a result of being directly involved in this industry, I don't think there's any ill intent in that, in you doing that. And so it's just really irritating to me when people automatically default to like, well, you're just doing it because you want clout or you're doing it because you want to destroy everyone's life.
Hater.
Exactly.
Okay.
But again, I think that that's a byproduct of
Mhm.
this echo chamber that these people find themselves in, whether they see that or not. And I
Yes.
only have that perspective from like stepping out of it.
Yes, right. That's what you have to do, honestly. Um, as I may have mentioned earlier, I honestly held on longer than I should have. You know, yes, I'm judging myself for it, but I mean, seriously, I kept wondering if there was a way forward for me, to operate in an ethical manner, to make it affordable, um, accessible to more than just the wealthy. Um, I did think that this was good stuff. I really did. And so it isn't only the sunk cost fallacy, although you are spot on that. That is one reason that we hang on longer than we should. But it's also, yes, the emotional attachment to it.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, I was all in. I was all in. I believed so hard. I did all the things. I manipulated my own mind like crazy. I became an expert at it. Um, and there just wasn't a way forward at all that I could see within the industry.
For sure, and I think that that detachment component is often the most challenging because what we do or what we choose to do as a career path or, in the case of coaching, like, that becomes your entire being. Who are
Identity.
you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And so learning how to then detach yourself from not only the industry, but from this identity that you've created for yourself over the course of 6 years, like, that's a long time
Yeah.
to have to kind of, like, unwind from that. So, I guess I'd be curious for you to share some of that. Obviously, like, this is fairly fresh for you,
Mm.
but I know you've mentioned going to therapy. Are there other things that you've been doing in an effort to kind of figure out who you are outside of coaching?
Yeah, detangle and all of that. Yes, actually, the therapy. I'm in somatic therapy too, by the way. So it's like, oh yes, I can get my whole body engaged in this, and it's not just my mind. I mean that's the thing. I needed to get out of that. I tried the traditional talk therapy. I started last year. I did 8 months of that. I started somatic therapy, and in 8 weeks, I was like leaps and bounds beyond 8 months of sitting and talking, you know? So, yes, sharing stories is one thing, and I do think stories are important, and I do think that people's experiences are super important, but to continue to relive and rehash them, week after week, just in a CBT manner and, in a cognitive manner only, I didn't find that to be effective. I needed more than that to undo the literal mind fuck that I've been through, you know? So, I am doing that. There is also a beautiful program. This is a global nonprofit called Recovery Dharma, and it is for all addictions. It's not just alcohol and drugs. It's also like, binge eating and, technology or, gambling, whatever, process addictions, cigarettes, things like that. It's just like bring your addiction, all are welcome, right? And I have found that to be such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Um, for me to be able to be in the space with those people and presence with those people. I do have a few local meetings in my area, but just the way that it works is you don't label yourself as anything. You don't even have to say what your addiction is. I mean, it's just here's my name and here's my share. That's it. You know, but that's the second half of the meeting. The first half is all about community, and we meditate for 20 minutes as a community, and just really get grounded and centered. And it has been so healing for me to be a part of that.
Amazing. I'm so happy to hear that you've found, the outlets that have proven effective for you. Um, Before we wrap up here, I guess, do you have any sort of parting words of wisdoms, lessons learned, things that you'd like to share with the audience before we sign off?
I guess the only thing that I can think of, honestly, in closing to share with your audience and you is that courage is hard to come by sometimes. It just really is. It's hard to say the hard things out loud. It's hard to go against the popular train of thought, if you will. But I wouldn't change it. It's worth it. It's worth it. I'm out. I'm proud, and I'm loud, and I'm here to stay.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your experience. I mean, I say this in every interview, but it's so true that the more that people can feel safe in sharing their experiences, whether it's here in a New York Times article, wherever that is, I think that there is like a sense of validation that someone who's watching this video is going to find.
Yeah,
And it takes people like you being willing to speak up and just share so candidly. So I really do appreciate it.
thank you.
I want to give a big shout out to Sunny for sharing her story so transparently. If you're someone who wants your story either read out on the channel or you want the chance to come on and have an interview with me, the form to submit your story is linked in the description down below. Be sure to share your thoughts here in the comments. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'm going to leave you on screen here with an interview I did with a woman who invested her entire 401k into her coaching business and may or may not allegedly, potentially have been involved in the similar, if not same, life coaching program. Okay, I'm not saying anything. Take care, comb your hair. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!